Indeed, I will emphasize the point that His Excellency emphasized, and that's to some extent the elephant in the room that each of you has referred to either directly or indirectly. I think the most direct was Catherine, global governance. This is a tough issue, yet overdue. I personally started thinking about that and experienced it when I was Prime Minister of Jordan, and we had the refugee crisis, the Syrian refugee crisis, and other refugees from other areas. And we started working with donors to come up with a compact with donors about what do we do as hosts, what's expected of us in terms of health and education, and what's expected of the donors. And we wanted to make sure that this isn't just covered until there's another new news coming up. And the donors, I remember, they said, look, there's donor fatigue. And I said, I fully understand, but there's refugee exhaustion as well as the host communities. So don't give us that about donor fatigue. And we worked very hard on a document that got largely implemented. And my question to them was, why is this being, why are we sort of tailoring this to particular situations when we know, whether with climate refugees or conflict refugees, war refugees, whatever, this is going to become more and more of a phenomenon. That so, what is the message we're sending countries? If this is just short term, sort of, you know, we'll cover you for the next 3 weeks kind of thing. Are we sending the message that if there are refugees on the other side of the border, open your borders up and receive them, and we'll be there for you? Or is it keep your borders closed, you're on your own? We don't want to tell you keep your borders closed, but basically you're on your own. We have to decide which message are we sending to countries. And if it's the former, then we need global governance, not just of climate refugees and political refugees, but all the climate and food issues that have been discussed today and yesterday. And what is evident is that if we don't do that, I mean, we all know, I'm talking to policy people and academics, what we're talking about is collective action. When you have collective action problems, externality problems, to internalize them, you create institutions. That's what happened with the UN, regardless of how effective it has been. It started as a League of Nations, then it became the UN. Humanity creates institutions. The nation state is an institution to internalize externality. Now the externalities cannot be internalized at a local or a national level. They have to be internalized at a global level so that we manage that over time. So the question becomes, how do we do it? Now, I realize this is in a sense wishful thinking, but I bet you 300 years ago, if you had talked about nation states and the UN, that would have been, to tribal-based and countries, that would have been ridiculous. And I bet you, I'm willing to bet, that our grandchildren, if they are to enjoy equality of life, there are going to be global institutions that internalize the cost. You know better what these are, and there is a list of them. But the idea of custodianship over intergenerational natural assets, doing away from GDP for the interest of national assets, natural assets, and keeping a scorecard, looking at the insurance schemes, the emergency intervention schemes. These institutions will need to be built sooner or later. If you talk to politicians today, they'll say, look, today geopolitics between China and the US and Russia and what have you, they're going to trump everything, any discussion about these global types of institutions, because these institutions need to be, unlike COP 26 and 27, what we're talking about here is not pledges by countries that are not binding. We need institutions that once you are in, you can make your pledges, the pledges you make are binding. And I had a discussion once with members of the UN, and they said we're a sovereign state-based system. It's very hard to force countries to do things. And I said, excuse me, the World Trade Organization, just because it's about trade, not about human rights, not about ecology, is able to enforce its rules. And when countries sign to the WTO, World Trade Organization, they are bound by things. Now, maybe things are unraveling at this point between the US and China, but still, we have built an institution. So we can do that for exchange of goods, but we can't do that for CO2 emissions, and for even the World Trade Organization doesn't include human rights, labor issues, and maybe they've started doing that, but issues I really think sooner or later humanity will get there, and I really hope it is. I really hope it is sooner. And I really think, I will repeat what His Excellency mentioned about the Academy and the Vatican. There is no better, frankly, launch of both the analytics of and the awareness and advocacy for it than the Vatican and the Academy, simply because of the horizon that most governments, are thinking of the immediate. You come and talk to them about something that's gonna come in effect in 10, 20, 30, 50 years. Nobody has the patience. But this is where this place has a particular comparative advantage in pushing for things that are important for all of humanity. And maybe some of it tomorrow, because as we all said, we need emergency intervention right now. This can be focused on, but in parallel, let's imagine, let's daydream, let's whatever about what we think might be an ideal situation, and then let's work with the politicians when they're free. But let's get that, in my view, done, because it is for the sake of humanity and our future of this world. It is crucial. Thank you very, very much.